Alright, so we all know that I've humbled myself pretty much everywhere I went around a bunch of bootlickers who would be at my mercy in a dark alley when no one is around. Much like the Africans had to humble themselves when the Woods came in with guns, the Italians, the Germans, the Soviets, and the Americans, okay, they all wanted a peace. Who got the smallest piece? The Soviets. Who got the biggest piece? The French, the English, who fought the 100-Year War from 1337 all the way on, was the French and the English. Joan of Arc, 1432, I believe it was, she was burned at the stake. Now remember, there's people like the Franks, there was Normandy, there was people like Pepin III in 751, and the Carolingian dynasty. But we're going to focus on the timeline that I'm presenting you in this video right here. I never presume to know every date. Nobody knows every date in history. No one knows everything about history. But I give you my take on what I do know, and I review it with you. A lot of times in these videos, I'm reviewing the article for the second, third, fourth time, and I'm doing it with you. And I'm helping you see it the right way. Now, this starts at 1941, mutual assistance agreement between British and Soviets. British occupy Syria, 1941. Roosevelt freezes Japanese assets in the United States and suspends relations. Goring instructs Heydrich to prepare for final solution. So remember, 1941 was far after 1921, when Hitler starts rising to power politically, and when Hitler's in the chancellor in the late 30s, 1930s, he was starting to get power. They had a plan this whole time. They had a plan from prison on, like the Aryan Brotherhood. Remember, just like the Aryan Brotherhood, he's a Nazi who started in prison, whose orders came from the criminal structure of the bankers who control the criminal gangs in jail. Now, we go on to 1941. The United States announces an oil embargo against aggressor states. Roosevelt and Churchill announces the Atlantic Charter. Nazi siege of Leningrad begins. Nazis order Jews to wear yellow stars. Why did they do that? Symbolism. Remember, time and place. In one place, the symbol of the Star of David, or the symbol of the six-point star, is a Jewish symbol of pride. In another time and place, it's a symbol of shame. So we go on to the first experiments, use of gas chamber of Auschwitz. Nazis take Kiev. Nazis murder 33,000 Jews at Kiev. Operation Typhoon. Germans take Odessa, Kharkov, and Sevastopol, as I told you in the last one. British aircraft carrier Air Royal is sunk off Gibraltar by U-boat. Germans take Rostov, and then the Soviets retake it. I covered that in the last video. Soviet army launches a major counteroffensive around Moscow. Japanese Pearl Harbor. Hitler's issue. Remember, in 1945, when the war ends, it wasn't until afterwards that a lot of these guys were committing suicide, and way later till they were getting caught. Like when, I believe it was Himmler, but I could be mistaken, was caught in Argentina. I went over that in one of the videos past. Now, we go on, talk about Rommel begins a retreat to El Ghaila in North Africa. Hitler takes complete control of the German army. The Declaration of the United States, signed by 26 allied nations in 1942. So, the United Nations was formed during the World War II, like Gaddafi pointed out in his UN mandate and during the speech of the UN. And when he ripped up the UN mandate and gave his own verbal one, and demanding that that the General Assembly has more power over the Security Council. Now we go on to Rommel's counteroffensive from El Ghaila. First American forces arrive in Great Britain. German air raids begin against Cathedral in Britain. German summer offensive begins in Crimea. Rommel begins an offensive against the Gazelian Line. Heydrich, Prague. Heydrich, Germans at Sevastopol. Heydrich's assassination, Tobruk. Rommel breaches El Alamein near Cairo, Egypt. So even in World War II, Egypt is a battleground, obviously. It's always, in every major conflict, Egypt is involved. Just like World War I, there was supplies, and I'm not going to, let's just finish the time. Now, first deportations from Warsaw Ghetto to concentration camps. Treblinka extermination camp open. British Bernard Montgomery takes command of 8th Army in North Africa. Stalin and Churchill meet in Moscow. I'd cover that. First all-American attack in Europe. Hitler orders the execution of the commandos. Operation Supercharge. When Operation Torch. Remember, I taught you about Operation Cobra, Operation Dragoon. Okay, the symbolism and the nuances as well between a dragon and a dragoon. Now, we go on to British Secretary Eden, and remember, do I really have to get into that? The symbolism of that, the foreign secretary being Eden during the World War II. We go on to the Battle of the Barents Sea. German and British ships, they exchange fire. A lot of people getting hit up. Germans begin withdrawal from Caucasus. We're in 43. The Battle of the Kursk. Battle of the Kursk is a very interesting battle where the Soviets take Kursk. There's also Montgomery 8th Army takes Tripoli. So during this, they're in Libya. A lot of trouble is a lot taking place. From the seas of da da to the da. It's part of that song. Now we get to Battle of Kasserine, and Soviets retake Kharkov. Nazis arrest White Rose resistance leaders in Munich. Germans begin a withdrawal from Tunisia. Germans recapture Kharkov. Battle of Atlantic. I talked about that in the last videos. And I talked about Hitler's orders, liquidation of all Jews in ghettos in Poland. And we go all the way on to Germany occupies Rome, rescues Mussolini. Mussolini reestablishes fascist government in 43 because the mafia is fighting with him. Everyone's giving him a hard time. Large British air raid on Berlin. Churchill, Roosevelt, Stalin meet at Tehran. Soviets launch offensive on the Ukrainian front. Soviet troops advance into Poland far after Hitler has already, which really got the war kicked off. He was already, taking over stuff before that. The Germans withdraw to the Adolf Hitler line. Germans retreat from Anzio. Allies enter Rome. D-Day landings. Soviets offensive against Finnish begins. Nazis liquidate the town of Aérodor-sur-Glane in France. First German V-1 rocket attack on Britain. Operation Bagration begins, which is a Soviet summer offensive. We get on to the Battle of Hedgerow. U.S. troops. Remember, this is from History.com. The same one I used, I think it was WorldHistory.com. The same one I used in the last video. I say this source in the last video. Now we go to Polish army on Frank. Remember, in the Gestapo and the whole Diary of Anne Frank and all that shit. Operation Dragoon, 1944. Soviet offensive. Slovak begins. Soviet troops take Burkast. Get Verdun, Artois, Rouen, Abbeville, Antwerp, and Brussels liberated by Allies. Okay, these are the French area. And U.S. troops reach the Siegfried Line in Western Germany. Operation Market Garden begins. Soviets capture Riga. So remember, the Operation is Garden, Operation Cobra. So, they're really symbolic in this. Just like when they land on the moon and they said, and it was called Apollo, and you had the Apollo missions, and they say the Eagle has landed, and we go on to, the Waffen SS, Murder 81, U.S. POWs in Malmedy, the Malmedy Massacre. We talk about the Battle of the Bulge. Okay, we talk about when the German troops captured Warsaw in 1945. Roosevelt, Churchill, Stalin meet in Yalta yet again. Yap, 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 yap. Dresden is destroyed. Allies take Cologne. Establish a bridge across the Rhine. Where do you think Cologne comes from? Yeah, a lot of it does come from. Yeah. But who really came up with it before that? Really, it was the Egyptians. But who takes credit? The whites, the French. Who always takes credit? Like they take the Egyptian artifacts. Recently, some of those guys, those Maori guys in New Zealand, got some of their artifacts back from the white people that took them, and it's the same thing, man. That's how it goes down, man. Anyone knows anything about history knows that's exactly how it goes down. So, 1945 on May 7th was when World War II really ends because the German forces surrendered. But of course, you had the UN Charter signed in San Francisco, which is not far from where I live. And then we go on. Of course, they know me in the streets there. Yada me, yada do, yada I'm saying. Now we talk about Soviets declare war on Japan. Second atomic bomb, Nagasaki. Japanese surrender in 1945, and that's when the war really comes to an end. And you know how there's still Japanese troops in some islands in the forest, thinking the war's still on for a couple decades later, but it's okay. We're gonna end it there. Good job making it this far, putting up with all that timeline, but you really need this, at least to be exposed to it, to really get where I'm coming from. Thank you.